Well, the biggest show in town is the no-show of the Epstein Files. And my goodness, the reverberations are rocking the Washington political establishment. Perhaps not as much as the release of the files would have rocked them, although that's beginning to be a close call, because it's unlikely that Donald Trump's administration will survive unbroken by the decision of the president and the vice president and the attorney general and the chief of the FBI that Jeffrey who, that there's no case to answer, leaving now, on the face of it, an innocent woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father I knew well in a penitentiary in the United States for trafficking children for sexual purposes to no one at all. It is an almighty mess, compounded by the asinine behavior of President Trump himself in response at the cabinet meeting yesterday to an obvious question about the abandonment of the Epstein Files case. He basically said, Jeffrey who? He basically said that the man that he had such close relationships with over a whole decade was now a forgotten person. Memory hold. But the public doesn't seem to agree. The overwhelming likelihood that Epstein was at the center of a major domestic and international espionage scandal, entrapping dirty men for videoing of their sexual predilections and peccadillos. The overwhelming likelihood that that involved Israel was not stilled by the fact that the abandonment of the case took place on the very day that Netanyahu made his third visit to the White House in just 6 months, with some saying yet another meeting is still to come. The overwhelming likelihood is that Jeffrey Epstein, who had spy cameras in every single room of his mansion in Manhattan, controlled by a central control room where the FBI took hundreds and hundreds of hard drives, DVDs, CDs, and Polaroids, no doubt. But they've all disappeared. There are no Epstein files. There is no case, which must come as a huge disappointment to Jeffrey Epstein if he's still alive, because he's gone and done all of that for nothing. It turns out there's no case against him, that he trafficked nobody to nobody. It turns out that the likelihood of additional prosecutions was zero. It turns out that the material seized from the Manhattan townhouse was so innocent it might have been Peppa Pig rather than what we thought it was. The overwhelming likelihood of Jeffrey Epstein working for both domestic and Middle Eastern intelligence, and that the cameras were to collect compromise on rich and powerful individuals on their way up or on their way down, is so obvious that a blind man can see it. And American public opinion is now voting with its feet, or rather its opinion poll answers, when asked if Trump's administration has handled this the right way. It's not helped by the fact that Donald Trump literally campaigned for the presidency on the release of the Epstein Files. It's not helped that Kash Patel, the chief of the FBI, repeatedly stated that he was going to bust this case wide open. It's not helped by the fact that the Attorney General Bondi said that she had the files on her desk, the files that she now claims do not exist. It's not helped by the fact that sundry influencers were called to the White House and given binders of part 1 of the Epstein investigation. That's what it said on the front. Part 1 ineluctably implying there would be a part two at least. And it turns out those binders were absolutely empty. Binders full of nothing. Well, if you believe that, I've got a bridge here in London. You may have seen it in our beautiful new title sequence that I could sell you going cheap. Nobody believes it. Steve Bannon doesn't believe it. Roger Stone doesn't believe it. Alex Jones doesn't believe it. Jack Posso doesn't believe it. Tucker Carlson doesn't believe it. Nobody who was anybody in the insurgency that propelled Donald Trump back to power believes it. And least of all, Elon Musk doesn't believe it. And he, in his new America Party, is going to profit mightily from it. It's not just about the sex. Though I have on my phone, I don't know how many messages, I lost count of them, from one of Epstein's victims living in Europe, who contacted me over and over and over and over and over again yesterday, worried out of her mind that they are still out to get her, as they got to Virginia Giuffre, as they may very well get to anyone who might have evidence that can lead to the explosion of this sordid case. But it's not just about the sex. Powerful men have been predating on young women and have been collecting information about other powerful men predating on young women for millennia. It could be put down to just dirty men. It's the espionage, stupid. It's the fact that it was being filmed for a foreign power, and that foreign power seems to hold not just overweening, but overwhelming power in the citadels of Washington, D.C., on the Capitol Hill, in the White House, and in the three-letter agencies, the so-called deep state. That power that they wield is otherwise inexplicable, because public opinion is marching overwhelmingly, even in the United States, against the never-ending wars that country, Israel, has dragged the United States into, against the never-ending cascade of cash and weapons and shilling that is the United States today in relation to Israel. Public opinion is marching in the opposite direction to the march of the oligarchs and the march of the political class in Washington. Why would that be? Well, we already know about people we've never heard of even in the United States, receiving millions of dollars from the Israel lobby to keep their political careers buoyant. I'm thinking of Randy Fine. You don't get more buoyant than Congressman Randy Fine, but there are many, many others whose names are unknown even to me, a political junkie. But it's not just about the cash. It's about the compromise. You see, if you've been invited by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to a townhouse in Manhattan, or to a sex island in the Caribbean, or to a ranch in Arizona, or to a mansion house in the Florida Keys, and you are filmed sexually abusing and raping underage girls that Maxwell and Epstein have provided for you, you are done. You are trussed up like a kipper. Not only your career will be over if that compromise is released, your marriage will be over. Your children will shun you and spit upon your memory. Your neighbors will turn their backs away. No one will ever again want to know you, interview you, let alone vote for you. When somebody's got that kind of compromise on you, if they say bend over, you for sure are going to have to bend over. And what, if not bending over, is the United States doing with Benjamin Netanyahu? A man deeply unpopular in his own country, a man for whom an international arrest warrant for crimes against humanity, war crimes, is extant, a man who's supposed to be arrested on sight by the so-called rules-based international order 3 times in 6 months. I've seen Trump with Netanyahu more often than I've seen him with Melania over the last 6 months. And this time, with no press conference, this time with no address to Congress, this time is the most mysterious time of all. As I saw them gathered together, Netanyahu on one side, Trump looking distinctly peaky on the other, not so much the orange man as the purple man, a man prematurely orange, a man prematurely sunburnt, fake sunburnt, sitting uncomfortably opposite him. I got to wondering what it was exactly these fiends were planning. The 1C conference in Germany must have looked something like that gathering yesterday. The 1C conference, when the final solution of the Jewish question was being resolved by Hitler's adjutants and minions. A conference. I've been in the building outside Berlin, where the death camps, where the concentration camp gas chambers, where the genocide, the Holocaust, the mass murder of millions of Jews was decided upon. So sensitive, they even minuted it carefully, but just not carefully enough. And many of the people at that conference were subsequently executed after the Nuremberg war crimes trials for crimes against humanity and are damned forever. I wondered if this was the 2025 edition of the 1C conference. I wondered if they were laying their ugly, devilish plans for a final solution of the Palestine question. I've got guests tonight who will have a point of view on that. I have my own suspicions. It might have been about that. It might have been another attack on Iran, or it might well have been both, given that both are inextricably linked issues. The one thing it wasn't about was the betterment of the American people. The one thing that it wasn't about was funneling state federal funds to Texas, where so many innocents were swept away in devastating floods just the other day. The one thing that it wasn't about was getting America back to work, getting the factories back into action, getting production, manufacturing, and all the other things that MAGA was supposed to be about. It wasn't about any of those things. It wasn't about the hunger crisis in America. And it wasn't even about the plummeting popularity of Donald Trump, whose idea of changing the law and running for a third presidential term are now as dead as the proverbial dead duck. In fact, Trump will be lucky to finish this presidential term. Trump's family, who must have dreamed of a Trump dynasty in American politics, must now be looking to their portfolios for something else to do with the rest of their lives. The one good thing about American presidential politics is that there's always another presidential election along in a minute. And there is along in a minute. Coming up, the final reckoning of Donald Trump after the bombshell of the failure of the investigation into the Epstein Files. We'll be talking to the judge, not just any judge, but Judge Andrew Napolitano, right after this short break, and you will not want to miss it. Stay tuned.